The Great Hall of Station Meridian was the largest room ever built in space. It could hold 10,000 beings from 40 different species, and today, every seat was full. Light from a nearby star poured through the crystal ceiling and painted everything in gold. This was the annual Galactic Assembly, the one time each year when all civilized species came together to remember their shared promise. Captain Park Day 1 stood at the back of the human section. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver buttons, and tried not to feel small. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 80 years. Compared to species that had traveled between stars for 10,000 years, humans were still babies, but they had earned their place here. They had proven themselves useful, hardworking, and honest. Most importantly, they had accepted the one law that bound all civilizations together. Ambassador Kao Sung-ho walked to the central platform. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. His job was to speak for all of humanity at this gathering. Captain Park watched him with respect. Kao had dedicated his life to building bridges between humans and other species. "Friends," Kao began, his voice carrying through the hall's perfect sound system, "we gather again to renew our commitment to the Covenant of Children." The translation systems hummed quietly, turning his words into 40 different languages. Every species heard him in their own tongue. "This law is older than most of our civilizations," Kao continued. "It was written by beings we have never met, who lived and died before any of us reached the stars. But its wisdom remains perfect. The young of any sentient species are sacred. They are untouchable in all conflicts. Wars may come, planets may burn, but no child shall ever be harmed." Captain Park felt the weight of those words. Humanity understood this law better than most. They had learned it the hard way, through centuries of their own terrible mistakes. Human history was full of children who had suffered in wars they did not start. When humans finally reached the stars and learned about the Covenant, they accepted it without question. Lieutenant Yoon Jin leaned close to Captain Park. She was his communications officer, a young woman with sharp eyes and a gift for languages. "The Kravik delegation looks unhappy," she whispered. Park followed her gaze. On the far side of the hall, the Kravik sat in their section like stones. They were tall beings with scaled skin and cold yellow eyes. Their bodies were built for war, with thick arms and natural armor on their chests. The Kravik had joined the galactic community 300 years ago, but they had never truly accepted its peaceful ways. "They always look unhappy," Park whispered back, "more than usual today." Ambassador Kao finished his speech to polite applause. Other representatives took their turns at the platform, each one promising to honor the Covenant. The Velas speaker, a graceful being with silver fur and 4 arms, spoke beautifully about protecting future generations. The Turani delegate, whose people communicated partly through colors that shifted across their skin, glowed with peaceful blue patterns. Then something happened. A junior aide rushed to the council president's side and whispered urgently. The president, an ancient being from a species so old that nobody remembered their original planet, went very still. His wrinkled face showed something Captain Park had never seen there before: fear. "The assembly will pause," the president announced. His voice trembled slightly. "We have received an emergency transmission." The great screens around the hall flickered to life. Every being in the room turned to watch. The image showed burning ships against the blackness of space. Debris floated everywhere. It was a trade convoy, and it had been destroyed. "This happened 4 hours ago near the border of Kravik space," the president said. "A Velas trade convoy carrying supplies and passengers." The Velas section erupted in worried sounds. Several of them stood, their silver fur standing on end with distress. "We are still gathering information," the president continued. "But there is something you all must know." The screen changed. It showed a list of names with ages next to them. Captain Park felt his blood turn cold as he read it. The Kravik did not simply destroy the convoy, the president said. They boarded it first. They took prisoners. Specifically, they took the children. The hall exploded into chaos. Captain Park stared at the list. 47 names. Ages 3 to 12 in human terms. 47 children torn from their families and taken by the most violent species in the galaxy. This is a violation of the Covenant, the president said, trying to restore order. The most serious violation in 600 years. The Kravik delegation stood as one and walked out of the hall. They did not speak. They did not explain. They simply left, their heavy footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Lieutenant Yoon's hand shook as she worked her communication device. "I'm getting reports," she said. "The Kravik High Command has released a statement. They say the children are hostages. They want the Velith to give up territorial claims to 3 star systems in exchange for their return." Park felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. They're using children as bargaining chips. "The council is calling an emergency session," Yoon reported. "They want to discuss options." But Park had seen the faces around the hall. The shock was already fading. In its place came something worse. Calculation. Species were looking at the Kravik section, at the empty seats, and doing math in their heads. The Kravik military was the 3rd largest in the galaxy. Their ships were fast and deadly. A war against them would cost millions of lives. Ambassador Ko approached Captain Park with heavy steps. The old diplomat looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "They're going to negotiate," Ko said quietly. "I can already see it. They're going to try to make deals while those children sit in Kravik cells." "They can't do that," Park said. "The Covenant means nothing if we don't enforce it." "The Covenant means nothing anyway, Captain. It's just words unless someone is willing to back them up with action." Ko looked toward the exit where the Kravik had disappeared. "And I don't think anyone here is willing to do that." The council president called for order again. Debates began. Species proposed sending messages. They suggested economic pressure. They talked about forming committees to study the situation. Nobody talked about rescue. Captain Park watched and listened, and the cold feeling in his chest grew colder. Somewhere out there, 47 children were waiting for help that might never come. They were alone in the dark, surrounded by enemies, and the galaxy was too afraid to save them. He thought about human history. He thought about all the times adults had failed to protect children. He thought about the promise humanity had made when they signed the Covenant. Then he made a decision. He caught Ambassador Ko's eye and nodded toward the door. The old diplomat understood. Together, they slipped out of the Great Hall while the galaxy argued about the price of doing what was right. Outside. In the quiet corridor, Park pulled out his personal communicator and entered a code that connected directly to Earth. "This is Captain Park, Day 1 of the USC Resolve," he said. "Get me the Admiralty. Tell them we have a situation. Tell them children are in danger." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Tell them humanity needs to answer." 3 days passed, and the Galactic Council did nothing. They talked. They argued. They sent strongly worded messages to the Kravik High Command. They threatened economic sanctions that both sides knew would never happen. Meanwhile, 47 children remained in enemy hands. Lieutenant Yoon Hai-jin had not slept in 2 days. She sat at her station on the bridge of the UNSC Resolve, translating message after message. Most were official communications between governments, full of careful words that meant nothing. But some were different. "Captain," she called to Park Day 1, who stood near the main window staring at the stars. "I have another one. From a Velith family." Park walked over and stood beside her. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. "It's from Counselor Vareth," Yoon said. She's one of the oldest and most respected members of the Velith species. 3 of her grandchildren were on that convoy. She played the message. An elderly Velith appeared on the screen. Her silver fur had faded to white with age, and her 4 hands trembled as she spoke. Tears streamed down her face, leaving wet trails in her fur. Please, the old female begged. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us. My grandchildren are only 6, 8, and 11 years old. They must be so scared. The council talks and talks, but they do not act. Is there no one in this galaxy who will save our children? The message ended. Silence hung heavy on the bridge. Park closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was something new in his expression. Something hard and determined. How many messages like this have you received? He asked. Over 200, Yoon answered. From families all over Velith space. Some are angry. Most are just desperate. They keep asking the same question. Why won't anyone help? A chime sounded from the communications panel. Yoon checked it and sat up straighter. Captain, there's a fleet arriving at Station Meridian. Human ships. 23 of them. Park allowed himself a small smile. That would be our answer. The Galactic Council was in session when the human delegation arrived. This time, it was not Ambassador Ko who spoke for humanity. Instead, a woman in military uniform walked to the central platform. She was tall and strong, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen many battles. Admiral Choi Yunbai, commander of the 7th Human Fleet, looked around the great hall at the assembled species. She did not smile. She did not offer pleasantries. I will be brief, she said. Humanity did not survive our own darkness to watch children suffer while the galaxy counts coins. The hall went very quiet. For 3 days, this council has debated what to do about 47 stolen children. Choi continued. You have discussed economics. You have worried about the cost of war. You have calculated how many of your own people might die if you take action. She paused, and her voice grew harder. Not once have I heard anyone calculate how much those children are suffering right now. Not once has anyone asked what they are going through while you sit in comfortable chairs and argue about politics. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Kravik section was still empty. Humanity will not wait any longer, Admiral Choi declared. We have already sent reconnaissance teams into Kravik space. We know where the children are being held. They are on a moon called Thraxis in a military detention facility, and we are going to get them back. The hall erupted into noise. Species shouted questions and objections. Some demanded that humanity wait for council approval. Others warned about starting a war. Admiral Choi raised her hand for silence. It took a long moment, but eventually the noise died down. I am not asking for permission, she said clearly. I am informing you of our intentions. The Covenant of Children is not a suggestion. It is a sacred law. The Kravik broke that law, and humanity will be the consequence. The council president leaned forward. Admiral, the Kravik military is vast. Your fleet, impressive as it is, cannot hope to win a direct confrontation. You will lose ships. You will lose lives. Is it worth it for children who are not even human? Choi stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the hall. Let me tell you something about humans, she said. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest or the smartest. Our technology is good but not the best. On paper, we should not be able to do many things, but we do them anyway. Do you know why? Nobody answered. Because we have learned through thousands of years of painful history that some things matter more than survival. Those children matter. Their fear matters. Their pain matters. And the message we send today matters more than any of it. She turned to look directly at the Valiath section, where Counselor Vareth sat weeping silently. If we stand by while children are taken and used as tools, then we deserve whatever darkness comes next. Humanity refuses to be that kind of species. If we are the only ones willing to pay the price for doing what is right, then so be it. On the bridge of the Resolve, Lieutenant Yoon watched the feed with tears in her eyes. Beside her, other crew members had stopped their work to listen. Some of them were crying too. "She's really going to do it," Yoon whispered. "She's going to attack the Kravik." Captain Park nodded. "We all are. We might not come back, I know." Park turned to face his crew. They were young, most of them. Some had families waiting at home. All of them had chosen to be here. "Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship before we cross into Kravik space, I will approve the request. No questions asked. No judgment. This is going to be dangerous." Nobody moved. Finally, a young ensign spoke up. "Sir, I have a little sister back on Earth. She's 9 years old. Every time I look at those names on the list, I think about her. About how scared she would be if strangers took her away from everyone she loved." Other crew members nodded. "We're not leaving," the ensign finished. "We can't." Park felt pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best. Not because they were brave, though they were. Not because they were strong, though they would need to be. But because they could not look away from suffering children. "Then prepare for departure," he ordered. "We cross into enemy space in 6 hours." As the crew rushed to their stations, Park took one last look at the stars through the window. Somewhere out there, 47 children were waiting in the dark. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that strangers from a species they had never met were willing to die for them. But they would learn. The galaxy would learn. Admiral Choi's words echoed in his mind. Some things matter more than survival. He hoped she was right. Because in 6 hours, humanity would bet everything on that belief. The human fleet moved through Kravik, space like ghosts. Other species watching from their monitoring stations could not believe what they saw. Human ships were not supposed to be this fast. Human crews were not supposed to work this long without rest. Yet there they were, slipping through patrol routes and sensor networks that should have been impossible to avoid. On the bridge of the UNSC Resolve, Captain Park Day 1 stood over the tactical display with Sergeant Beek Jinsu. The sergeant was a big man with a scarred face and steady hands. He led the Special Forces team that would go into the detention facility. "The insertion point is here," Beek said, pointing to a spot on the map. "Old maintenance tunnels that the Kravik stopped using years ago. They think they're collapsed. Our scouts say otherwise." Park studied the layout. "How many soldiers guard the facility?" "Best estimate is 200. Maybe more. And how many people do you have?" Beek's jaw tightened. 30. The numbers were terrible. 7 enemies for every human soldier. In normal circumstances, such an attack would be suicide. But these were not normal circumstances. "My team knows the odds," Beek said. "We also know what's at stake. Those children have been in Kravik hands for almost a week now. Every hour we wait is another hour of fear for them." Park nodded slowly. "What do you need from us?" "Keep the Kravik fleet busy. Give us time to get in, grab the kids, and get out. If their reinforcements reach the moon before we're clear, this becomes a lot harder. Admiral Choi's fleet will handle the space battle. We'll give you your window, Sergeant. Just bring those children home." Beek saluted and left to prepare his team. Elsewhere on the ship, Private Moon So-ro checked her medical supplies for the 10th time. She was 23 years old, fresh from training, and this was her first real mission. Her hand shook slightly as she organized bandages and painkillers. First time? Asked a voice behind her. She turned to find Specialist Han Tae-young leaning against the doorway. He was older, maybe 35, with the calm eyes of someone who had seen many battles. He was the team's infiltration expert, the one who would lead them through the tunnels. Is it obvious? Moon asked. A little. Han walked over and helped her close one of the medical cases. Being scared is normal. Anyone who tells you they're not scared before a mission is either lying or crazy. I keep thinking about those children, Moon admitted. The youngest is 3 years old. 3. I have a brother that aged back home. Han nodded. That's why we're here. That's why any of us are here. Hold on to that feeling when things get bad. It'll keep you moving when your body wants to stop. What if I freeze? What if someone gets hurt because I couldn't do my job? You won't freeze. Han looked at her with complete confidence. I've seen hundreds of soldiers train. Some of them were bigger than me, stronger, better with weapons. But the ones who truly excel are the ones who fight for something beyond themselves. You have that. I can see it. Moon took a deep breath and felt some of her fear fade. Not all of it, but enough. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we're back on this ship with 47 rescued children. Now come on. Briefing starts in 10 minutes. Far from the human fleet on the cold moon of Thraxis. The children huddled in their cells. The Kravik had separated them into groups of 5 or 6, putting them in small rooms with metal walls and no windows. The air was cold. The food was strange and barely enough. Guards walked past their doors every hour, their heavy footsteps making the floor shake. Ve Rath-Kin was 12 years old, the oldest of the captured children. She had her grandmother's silver fur and her father's courage. When the younger ones cried, she held them. When they asked what was happening, she told them stories to distract them from their fear. Tell us about the humans again, whispered a small boy named Thrall. He was only 5 and had not stopped shaking since they arrived. Vareth-Kin pulled him closer. Humans are a young species, she said softly, making sure the guards could not hear. They only discovered space travel 200 years ago, but they are very determined. My grandmother says they never give up, no matter how hard things get. Will they come for us? Asked another child, a girl with matted fur and frightened eyes. Vareth-Kin hesitated. She had heard the guards talking. They said the galaxy was too afraid to attack the Kravik. They said the children would be prisoners for a long time, but she could not tell the little ones that. Someone will come, she said. I promise. We just have to be brave until they get here. The door to their cell opened suddenly. A Kravik soldier stood there, his yellow eyes scanning the children. Behind him stood the facility's commander, a massive reptile with scars across his face. Commander Thomases looked at the children like they were cargo to be counted. Still healthy, he said. Good. Their value depends on their condition. Vareth-Kin felt anger rise in her chest. We are not cargo. We are children. Thomases turned his cold gaze to her. You are whatever I say you are. The Veleth will surrender their system soon. Then you will be released. Until then, you will remain quiet and obedient. And if they don't surrender? The commander's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. Then you will become examples. The galaxy needs to learn that the Kravik take what they want. He turned and left. The door slammed shut behind him. Little Thrall began to cry again. The other children looked at Vareth-Kin with desperate eyes. She held them all tighter and stared at the closed door. Someone will come, she told herself. Someone has to come. Back on the Resolve, the countdown had begun. Sergeant Beak gathered his team in the shuttle bay. 30 soldiers in black armor stood in perfect lines. Their faces were serious. Their equipment was checked and ready. In 1 hour, we drop onto that moon. Beak said. In 2 hours, we reach the facility. In 3 hours, those children walk out with us. That is not a hope. That is not a plan. That is what will happen. He looked at each of them in turn. The Kravik think we won't come. They think the galaxy is too scared. They think children are just tools to get what they want. His voice hardened. We are going to teach them otherwise. We are going to show them what happens when you hurt the innocent. Private Moon stood near the back, her medical bag heavy on her shoulders. Her fear was still there, but smaller now. In its place was something else. Something stronger. No child dies tonight, Beak finished. That is our mission. That is our promise. Now mount up. We have work to do. The soldiers moved to their shuttles. Engines hummed to life. Around them, the fleet prepared for battle. In a few short hours, everything would change. The space above Thraxis was on fire. Admiral Choi Yunbai stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the battle unfold. Human ships twisted and burned against the darkness. Kravik warships pounded them with weapons that should have ended the fight hours ago. But the humans would not break. 3 destroyers lost, her tactical officer reported. 5 more critically damaged. The enemy fleet is regrouping for another attack. Choi studied the display. Her ships were outgunned and outnumbered. By every measure of military logic, she should retreat. Save what she could. Fight another day. But behind her fleet, 3 small transport shuttles were racing towards safety. Inside those shuttles were 47 children and the soldiers who had saved them. Signal to all ships, Choi said calmly. Hold the line. Nothing gets past us. Admiral, the Kravik are sending everything they have. We cannot survive another direct engagement. I know. Choi turned to look at her crew. Young faces. Frightened faces. Brave faces. I know what I'm asking. And I'm asking anyway. Nobody argued. Nobody fled their station. They just went back to work. The Kravik fleet advanced. 50 warships against the 17 humans had left. It should have been a slaughter. 3 human destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the enemy. They were the ships most damaged, barely holding together. Their captains knew they would not survive the day. They went anyway. This is Captain Yim of the destroyer Unbroken, came a voice over the radio. We will create an opening. Get those transports through. Captain Yim, Admiral Choi said, the fleet honors your sacrifice. No sacrifice, Admiral. Just duty. Yim out. The 3 destroyers hit the Kravik formation like hammers. They did not try to survive. They tried to do as much damage as possible before they died. And they succeeded. 4 Kravik ships died with them. 6 more were crippled. A hole appeared in the enemy line, just for a moment. Transports are through. The tactical officer shouted. They're clear. The children are safe. Choi allowed herself one moment of relief. Then she turned back to the battle. New contacts. Someone called. Ships incoming from faster than light. The Admiral's heart sank. More Kravik reinforcements would end this fight for good. Her fleet had given everything. They had nothing left, but the ships that appeared were not Kravik. They were Velith. Dozens of them. Behind them came Tirani cruisers. Mendari fighters. Ships from a dozen species who had watched the battle from afar. Human fleet, came a new voice over the communications channel. This is Fleet Commander Verith of the Velith Navy. We apologize for our delay. We were finding our courage. More ships arrived. The Kravik fleets, suddenly outnumbered, began to pull back. It seems, Admiral Choi said slowly, that we are not alone after all. The battle turned. Species that had been too afraid to act alone found strength together. The Kravik, for all their power, could not fight the entire galaxy. They retreated. 3 days later. The children came home. The great hall of Station Meridian was full again, but the mood was different now. There was no debate, no calculation, only celebration. Councillor Vereth stood at the central platform. Her 3 grandchildren sat in the front row, clean and fed and safe. The oldest, Verethkin, watched everything with wide eyes. "I am old," the counselor began, her voice carrying to every corner. "I have seen many things in my long life. I have seen wars and peace. I have seen species rise and fall. But I have never seen anything like what happened at Thraxis." She paused, gathering herself. "I watched humans die for children who were not their own. I watched them fly into certain death so that transports could escape. I watched them fight through impossible odds because they believe some things matter more than survival." Her voice broke slightly. "When my grandchildren returned to me, they were carried in the arms of human soldiers. Those soldiers were more wounded than whole. They had given everything, body and soul, for children they had never met." She looked toward the human delegation, where Captain Park Day 1 stood with his crew. "We asked why," Vareth continued. "Why would humans sacrifice so much for children of another species? The answer we received was simple. They said, because they are children. That is all. That is everything." The hall was silent. "Today, I propose an amendment to the Covenant of Children. From this day forward, any violation of this sacred law will be met with immediate military response. No debates, no committees, no calculation of costs. The galaxy will answer as one, just as humanity answered alone." The vote was unanimous. In the medical bay of the Resolve, Sergeant Beat Jinsu woke up. Captain Park sat beside his bed, looking tired but peaceful. Through the window, stars drifted past slowly. "Did we win?" Beak asked, his voice rough from sleep. "We won," Park confirmed. "All 47 children are home. The Kravik have withdrawn. The Covenant has been strengthened." Beak closed his eyes for a moment. "How many did we lose?" Park was quiet. 3 destroyers, 214 crew members. They died so the transports could escape. Their names will be remembered. I promise you that." Beak nodded slowly. The weight of those losses was heavy, but not unbearable. Those people had chosen their sacrifice. They had given their lives for something that mattered. Was it worth it? Park asked quietly. Beak thought about the question. He thought about the children's faces when they realized they were being rescued. He thought about the small boy who had grabbed Private Moon's hand like she was his only hope. He thought about Counselor Vareth, weeping as she held her grandchildren for the first time since the nightmare began. "Ask me again in 50 years, he said. "When those kids have kids of their own." Park smiled. "I think I know what the answer will be." On the observation deck, Private Moon So-Ra stood alone and watched the stars. Her hands no longer shook. Something had changed inside her during the battle. She had found something she didn't know she had. Footsteps approached. She turned to find Varethkin, the 12-year-old Veleth girl who had kept the younger children calm through their captivity. "The human mech?" Varethkin asked. "Yes, Moon So-Ra." The young Veleth reached out with one of her 4 hands and took Moon's. "You held little Threll's hand through the tunnels. You carried 3 children yourself when we reached the shuttles. You saved my people's future." Moon felt tears form in her eyes. "I was just doing my job." "No." Varethkin shook her head. "You were doing something much more important. You were showing us what courage looks like." She squeezed Moon's hand and left. Moon turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, on 100 different worlds, children were sleeping safely tonight. They would grow up. They would have families. They would tell stories about the time the humans came to save them, and maybe, just maybe, They would remember the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. Some things matter more than survival. Some promises cannot be broken. And when the innocent cry out for help, someone must answer, even if it costs everything. Even if it costs blood. Lieutenant Yoon found Captain Park in his quarters later that night. He was writing letters to the families of the fallen. "Sir," she said, "message from Earth. The Admiralty wants a full report." Park nodded without looking up. "Tell them the mission was successful. Tell them our people performed with honor. Tell them the Covenant stands." Yoon hesitated. "Is that all?" Park finally looked at her. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but something in them was bright and undefeated. "Tell them humanity answered," he said. "Tell them we always will." The stars burned on through the endless night, witnesses to a promise that would never be forgotten. The battle began in silence. Sergeant Baek Jin-soo dropped through the moon's thin atmosphere with his team, their black suits making them invisible against the dark sky. Below them, the Kravik detention facility sat like a metal scar on the gray rock. Lights glowed from guard towers. Patrol vehicles circled the perimeter. 200 soldiers waited inside, confident that no one would be foolish enough to attack. They were wrong. Specialist Han Tae-young hit the ground first, rolling to absorb the impact. Within seconds, his team formed up around him at the entrance to the old maintenance tunnels. The metal grate that covered them was rusted but solid. "Cutting now," Han whispered into his radio. Blue sparks flew as his plasma cutter sliced through the lock. The grate swung open, revealing a dark passage that led down into the earth. "Move," Baek ordered. 30 shadows slipped into the tunnel. Behind them, the grate closed as if it had never been touched. The tunnels were narrow and cold. Water dripped from cracked pipes. The humans moved in complete darkness, using night vision built into their helmets. They made no sound. They left no trace. Private Moon So-ri felt her heart pounding in her chest. She was near the middle of the line, her medical bag bumping against her back with each step. The soldier ahead of her moved with practiced ease. She tried to match his rhythm. After 20 minutes, Han raised a fist. Everyone stopped. "We're under the facility," he reported quietly. "The tension level is directly above us. I count heavy foot traffic. Lots of guards. How many between us and the cells?" Baek asked. "At least 50 in the immediate area. More will come when they know we're here." Baek was silent for a moment. Then he spoke to the whole team. "Remember why we're here. Whatever happens next, we protect those children. Everything else is secondary. Everyone clear?" 30 voices answered as one. "Clear. Then let's go get them." Han planted charges on the ceiling. A soft countdown appeared on everyone's helmet display. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was controlled but loud. Metal and concrete fell away, revealing a corridor above. Kravik guards spun toward the noise, their weapons rising. They were too slow. Human soldiers poured up through the hole like water through a broken dam. Gunfire echoed off the walls. 3 Kravik fell before they could even aim. The rest tried to form a defensive line, but the humans were already among them, moving with a speed that seemed impossible. Sergeant Baek fought like a machine. His rifle barked again and again, each shot finding its target. A Kravik soldier swung at him with a blade. Baek ducked, grabbed the arm, and used the enemy's own weight to throw him into a wall. He finished him with a single shot and kept moving. "Push forward," he shouted. "The cells are ahead." Alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed. Doors all over the facility slammed open as more Kravik rushed to defend their prison. The numbers were terrible. For every guard that fell, 2 more seemed to take his place. Human soldiers took wounds. A sergeant named Yu went down with a hit to his shoulder. A corporal named Shin caught a blade across his arm. But they kept fighting. They kept advancing. Private Moon found you against a wall, blood pouring from his wound. She dropped to her knees beside him and tore open her medical bag. "Stay still," she ordered, her hands already working. The wound was bad, but not fatal. She packed it with quick-clot and wrapped it tight. "Can you move?" "I can fight," you growled through clenched teeth. "Then fight. But don't die. I didn't patch you up for nothing." She moved to the next wounded soldier before you could respond. Ahead, Specialist Han reached the main cell block. The doors were thick metal, locked from the outside. Through small windows, he could see silver shapes huddled inside. The children. "Contact," he shouted as more Kravik appeared at the end of the hall. "Need cover." 6 human soldiers formed a wall around him, their weapons creating a storm of fire that kept the enemies back. Han worked frantically on the door locks. His fingers flew across the keypad, trying combination after combination. "Almost there," he muttered. "Almost." A Kravik soldier broke through the line. He raised his weapon toward Han's back. Private Moon saw it happen from 15 meters away. She didn't think. She just acted. Her sidearm came up. Her finger pulled the trigger. The Kravik fell. It was her first kill. She didn't have time to process it. More enemies were coming. The lock clicked open. Han pulled the door wide and looked inside. 12 children stared back at him with huge, frightened eyes. Their silver fur was matted and dirty. Some of them were crying. "We're here to rescue you," Han said, keeping his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Stay together. Follow the soldier with the red mark on her helmet." He pointed to Moon. She moved to the doorway and held out her hand. A small boy, maybe 4 years old, took it first. His tiny fingers gripped hers like she was the only solid thing in a storm. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got all of you." More doors opened. More children emerged. Human soldiers formed a protective circle around them, shielding them from the battle with their own bodies. Sergeant Beak fought at the front, holding back a wave of Kravik reinforcements. He took a hit to his side. The pain was sharp and hot. He ignored it and kept shooting. "Report," he called. 35 children secured. Someone answered. "Looking for the rest." "Cell block 7, called another voice. 12 more here." Beak did the math in his head. 35 plus 12 was 47. "All of them. We have them all," he shouted. "Begin extraction." But the Kravik had blocked the way back to the tunnels. More soldiers poured into the facility. Commander Thomas's himself had arrived, his massive frame filling the corridor ahead. "You think you can take what is mine?" Thomas's roared. His voice echoed off the walls. "You are insects. You will die here, and these children will watch." Beak stepped forward to meet him. Blood ran down his side. His ammunition was running low. Behind him, 47 children waited to see if they would ever go home. "You made a mistake," Beak said quietly. "What mistake?" "You touched children." Beak raised his weapon. "That's not something humans forgive." The final fight began. Thomas's was huge and strong. His scales turned aside blows that would kill other species. But Beak was faster. He ducked under the commander's swing and put 3 shots into the gap between his armor plates. Thomas's stumbled. Beak put 3 more into his knee. The commander fell. "Secure him," Beak ordered. "He faces justice, not a quick death." Human soldiers bound the fallen commander while others pushed back the last defenders. A path opened to the tunnels. Not much of one, but enough. "Move the children," Beak shouted. "Now." Private Moon led the way, still holding the small boy's hand. Other soldiers carried the youngest ones. They moved as fast as they could through the narrow tunnels, the sounds of battle fading behind them, down above them. The human fleet engaged the Krivik Navy. Ships burned on both sides. But the transports were through. The extraction point was clear. When Moon emerged from the tunnel into the cold air of the moon's surface, she saw shuttles waiting. Human soldiers stood guard, their weapons ready. "Get them aboard," she called. Everyone aboard. Children poured into the shuttles. Soldiers followed, some of them wounded so badly they had to be carried. Sergeant Beak came last, his face gray from blood loss. "Everyone accounted for?" he asked. "All 47 children," Moon reported. "All 30 team members. Wounded but alive." Beak nodded slowly. Then his legs gave out. Moon caught him before he hit the ground. "Medic here," she shouted, becoming the patient rather than the rescuer. "I need help." Other soldiers rushed over. Together, they carried Beak into the last shuttle. Doors closed. Engines roared. They rose into the sky, leaving the burning facility behind.